Welcome to the U.S. Manufacturing Today podcast, your hub of information about the U.S. manufacturing and distribution industry. Brought to you by Variable, the on-demand labor solution revitalizing and optimizing your operation, enabling just-in-time response to demand, more efficient production, and lower cost per unit. And now your host and head of reindustrialization at Variable, Matt Horine.
Welcome back to U.S. Manufacturing Today, the podcast powered by Variable, where we talk with the leaders, innovators, and changemakers shaping the future of American industry, along with providing regular updates on the state of manufacturing, the changing policy landscape, and more. Today, we're joined by David Socha, CEO of the Beverly Hills Teddy Bear Company, a name many listeners may not know, but a product line millions of Americans absolutely do. For more than 30 years, David and his team have blended craftsmanship, creativity, safety, and ethical manufacturing to bring toys, plush, and collectibles to life for partners across the U.S. and the world. David, welcome to U.S. Manufacturing Today.
Thank you, Matt. I couldn't have said it better.
Great. I always like when we lead with a strong intro. So we're very excited to have you on the show, and we can jump right into it. Could you start by giving listeners your background? How did you find your way into the toy and collectibles business?
Yeah. As a kid, I loved toys, and I was a toy junkie from a very young age, from G.I. Joe to King Kong, whatever the toy was, I loved it. And fortuitously, my dad opened a toy store when I was about 8 years old. I actually worked in the toy store for 3 years while it was open. And then unfortunately, big recession hit in 1980. He had to go out of business. But I don't know, just got a real love for toys and passion about it. That was my first touch into it. And then I did an internship at a family gift company in Los Angeles for about a year and probably deepened my love and passion for toys and just things that put a smile on kids' faces. When my roommate and I, when our hockey careers went a bust, we said, you know what? Let's start a mail order company with toys. So we started a company where we bought teddy bears, dressed teddy bears in our apartment in Los Angeles. And if you want to send one to your girlfriend who was a nurse or whatever it might be, we would customize them. And that's really how it all kicked off, was starting with a mail order company, doing one at a time.
Wow, one at a time. That's a little bit different, built from the ground up versus the fast pace we see with e-commerce brands or even like fast fashion type stuff today. Really a testament to building businesses the old-fashioned way and doing that with that passion for sure. For those people who may not know the company by name, what do you produce today and what sets your approach apart?
I think more recently, we've taken more of a 100-year view of our company to really try and create legacy brands. So what really sets us apart, and I've had some great mentors. I wish I could say I learned this all myself, but I've had tremendous mentors that have taught me creative, sourcing, and just true business wisdom, which I'm still trying to gain a lot more of. But we just try to do things a little better. And I think there's terms like Kaizen and all these terms where never settle for good, always just keep striving to make it better. So we do that really with all of our products. And sometimes people say, why did you go the extra? You could have made it cheaper. It's just not who we are. I'm trying not to make landfill. I'm trying to make toys that could be in the toy box for 50 years and pull it out 50 years later and it's still there. That's really, in a small nutshell, what I think sets us apart is we try to do things a little better.
Yeah, what you said there caught my attention because when you step back from modern day, and my family I've got a 3-year-old, we've got a bunch of nieces and nephews. There's a lot of toys, there's a lot of things going on, but some of them stand out. And the manufacturing process behind that probably has a lot to do with bundling it with, they're personal. They make memories, and that responsibility probably shows up in the way that you lead and manufacture. So that makes a lot of sense. Speaking of the manufacturing, turning to that manufacturing and what's going on in the bigger world right now, toys, plush, all those things are one of the most globalized consumer categories, yet there's growing interest in some US-based production. What are you seeing out there, and what are some of the kind of trends that you fought through over the past year as the market changes have interrupted business as usual?
Yeah, obviously tariffs have played a key role in all of that. And I believe, and I'm probably going to make some haters here, I do believe tariffs have a place because we're being tariffed and charged from other countries. I think toys is a difficult one because we're conditioned to pay certain prices for products. And if I drill it down just to my plush toy business, there's, I believe, one maker left in America in Vermont, and which is a Vermont teddy bear company. I know the owner, great people. And there's some other people who finish off the stuffing in America. The difficulty is if we wanted to try and make in the USA, and I visited the biggest G7 factory about 8 months ago. Tremendous, unbelievable. And we tried working with them to figure out, is there a way to cut and sew stuffed animals in America? And the quality that we're used to at the price we're used to is an impossible dream at the moment. The infrastructure that other countries have, and probably in this order, China's number one, Indo or Vietnam is number two. Then you get down to Philippines and maybe Mexico. These are all places with pretty large workforces that are willing to do cut and sew product. In America, the new generation wants tech jobs, right? They want to be working for, no offense, Apple or Samsung or someone like that, or Amazon, where it's very techy. And we don't have, I think, kids or this next generation wanting to work in a factory, cutting and sewing garments or cutting and sewing stuffed animals. The beauty of it is that, and my friend who, he actually, when I first started the company, he said, the good news is you're manufacturing in Asia, but 80% of the GDP stays in America. And it's very true because we have a team here that does all the design work, all the art, then we contract manufacture, and then we import it, and then we sell it, wholesale it, or retail it. And on average, 80% of the GDP stays in the USA between salaries, shipping, the sale of the good at a Hallmark store or wherever it might be. So I think that's the part that's really hard to understand for products like this, because the majority of our products sell for under $30. And to bring manufacturing to the US, you're looking at multiples hourly wage because the cost of living is just so much greater here. And, you know, what a lot of people don't understand is, oh, you're working in China, the people are treated so poorly. And they're not. The majority, all of our factories, the majority, the employees dorm at the factory. They get 2 meals a day that are paid for. They can go out for the third meal, and they get a doctor care. So they save up their earnings, their wages, and then they send them home. And then when they go home for Chinese New Year, I'll pick on China for a minute. If they go home for Chinese New Year, they bring their money home and help support their family and the younger kids who are in the house. So really, China is us 120 years ago, right? You see these pictures of kids working on the railroad when they were 6 years old. China's not that. I think the working age in China, I think you have to be 15 if you're 14 or 15 if you're related to the factory owner, and 16 if not. It's a really interesting, and it's going to sound, I know the name of your podcast, but I love my Chinese partners. Some of them have become dear friends over the years, and they love America. Love America. When they go on vacation, they want to come to America.
The one thing that we highlight often on the show is that there's a lot of nuance to this in the trade environment, right? And then sometimes too far one direction or the other, nonpartisanly, you look at it through a version of, we want to bring everything back. It's okay, what is the next logical step? The infrastructure, the energy usage. We get a lot of notes about how much the energy grid has to be impacted to support that kind of manufacturing. And at some level, China, the way that globalization has shifted is it's not China of 30 years ago. In a lot of ways, labor has become a lot more expensive in China and other places because it's caught up. That industrial base is caught up. And you look at it, that's a really great way of framing it. 80% of the GDP is staying in the country. That's a big component. That's real. We talk to a lot of companies that they're fighting just labor arbitrage from the top down. It's like completely offshored. There's nothing going on, and then it hits the dock, and then all the money is never absorbed into the American economy. It's the American consumer paying out, nothing. There's layers to this, and there are certainly levels to understanding that. And we want people making things. We're a proponent of manufacturers. And one thing that you did say that's very interesting is if you look at textiles, and I think the stats on this were something like it's flipped from 97% of our garments were made in the US in the 60s. Now it's 3%. It's a complete inversion of that type of thing. And it's because the productivity never caught up. Now people who are looking at making those types of changes, even if they did bring that back, it's basically one job headcount for what used to be 10. And that's the nature of the world. That's industrialization. That is how things happen over the course of decades and even centuries. It's a real productivity question, and I think you framed it really nicely there. The other thing that your market very specifically encounters, there's obviously this applies to everybody, but I think specifically with toys and plush and anything else, is the pace of play kind of trends. They've changed dramatically. You see more engagement maybe on TikTok now, or fan communities that organize, or licensing cycles speed up. How have you guys kept up with the pace? Because it seems like you started 30 years ago. I'm sure that environment has changed. And how do you engage with this new world?
And when I look back at some of my biggest customers in the 90s, it was Blockbuster Video. They were huge. And the life cycle of a movie would come out. If it hit, Blockbuster would want product by the time the video hit the shelf, and then you'd have a long run. Now, the time from movie to on demand is very little. And we're not selling near the DVDs that we were, obviously, because all of our videos are within Amazon Prime, right? Or whatever it might be. So the life cycle for licenses is really fickle and really interesting. There's some crazy licenses, and from Skibbity Toilet to things like that to an adult, you're like, how in the world is this ever anything? But it became a sensation on YouTube or TikTok, and it translates to a kid's toy for a certain amount of time. And then you have these mega influencers, right? Like Mr. Beast or Dude Perfect or whoever it might be. So there's completely different collaborations that would have always been with an athlete before. Someone, Michael Jordan or someone like that. Now you have guys who shoot trick shots like Dude Perfect, who are wonderful, family friendly, that have a massive following, and it doesn't follow the traditional way of the world of how consumer products, what they're driven by anymore. Now they're driven by an influencer, not an athlete, not an actor. These are just YouTubers, right? And I guess they are entertainment, but yeah, so it's become a very difficult world in terms of it's split up and spliced with so many different IPs out there.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to frame it. You had hit the nostalgic button there for me when you mentioned Blockbuster Video and like the hype around Jordan and those types of things. I grew up in the 90s, so all of those things made sense. We should bring Blockbuster back, by the way. That should be something that should be on someone's agenda.
There's one store left, I think. I think there's one store left in the Northwest.
No kidding.
Is what I've heard.
No kidding. That would be, man, they could relaunch that, and I think they'd have a fast following and cult following. But you did mention a couple of things, and I might be aging myself here, but I heard a stat at some point that a certain percentage of kids were asked what they wanted to be when they grew up. And a lot of them answered famous or like a YouTuber. And it's such a different mentality than like a traditional profession. And you've seen people become famous, and that's obviously a huge dynamic to balance, especially in your market, because when you look at that, how do you balance the classic evergreen products, right? Like your core products against those newer micro trend type collectibles or those types of things?
We've had a lot of licenses over the past. And as of late, I'll say the last 5 years, we've really pulled back from licensing. We do have a couple of licenses that I believe are up and coming, but we've really tried to create brands that have evergreen appeal. And I think with the way technology and things are pulling us away from people and kids, I don't know, when I grew up, I was outside all the time, playing with my friends, fighting with my friends, whatever it was, right? You're interacting. Now, a lot of kids are behind a screen, but I think human nature, we still seek that companionship and fortunately or unfortunately, stuffed animals has become a huge super category because I believe it's aging up. Where little kids were with stuffed animals when they slept, now I think it's all ages. I can't tell you the amount of people I see on airplanes that are under their 20s and 30s holding a stuffed animal. And it might only be a clip-on, but a lot of people use it as a pillow. I believe it's that nurturing aspect of, okay, I don't have 10 best friends. I talk to my friend and I play video games with them virtually, but who do I have companionship with? So we've looked at toys in that framework. So hopefully that answered your question.
No, absolutely. I think you also teed something else up there. Do you think, this is a general business question, does the longevity you've had in the market at this point now give you the advantage, or does it create a pressure to constantly reinvent? Because I think that's a really serious challenge. It's very fast paced now, but you've got the longevity, you've got the core product of the classic evergreen. What's the advantage and what is the pressure?
The pressure is there's always something new. Almost every year there's a mega trend. Every 2 years, there's a mega trend that hits and it takes shelf space no matter what your legacy might be. Because if that brand is selling crazy, Squishmallows have been a massive hit over the last 5 years. Massive. And they've done an amazing job of growing that brand from a generic brand to now they have every license from Star Wars to Mickey Mouse to Harry Potter, and they've expanded shelf space. So the pressure is you still have to have some unique and trendy items. Hence, we've started a trend division where these products may only last 24 months, 18 months, but it fills that need of what's hot, what's popular now, and trying to find the next trend or product that can help you kind of balance your company out. We really try to have at least 3 pillars to our company: direct to consumer, licensing with other people's product. Then we have our trend division. Then we have our classic, which World's Softest and other brands fall into, because they're not all going to hit every year.
Yeah, there's a little bit of inner mixed volatility there with maybe something is not as big of a trend one year as another. How do you design for fans versus a traditional retail buyer? Because it sounds like within those pillars, you might be looking to a traditional retail buyer that's looking for something highly customized, or you may be looking to a traditional buyer. Is there a big split or thought on that?
I think you're alluding to this whole kidult area, which goes from a 50-year-old down to a 10-year-old who's going to collect something. So it's really finding, in terms of that, finding the product or product category. Is it a luggage tag? Is it a stuffed animal? Is it a figurine that fits that license? So that's on more of the fandom side, I'll call it, where you're really trying to match who's really the fan. Is it a 30-year-old or is it a 12-year-old? And what's popular? And then in the basic, I'll call it stuffed animal world of basic dogs, cats, axolotls, capybaras, whatever the hot animal is of the time, we just try to make it so that it'll appeal. The whole cliche thing is from anyone 1 to 99, right? Make a product that if a grandma picks it up or a little kid picks it up, they say, wow, this is very nice and very high quality. So those are the two dynamics, and they do cross over because you might have the same people buying both, but the fandom is very specific to the fan of that license.
That makes a lot of sense. One thing that you said about there is the quality can be felt, whether it's the 10-year-old or the 30-year-old or the grandmother buying the gift or something like that. Sometimes you see a mismatch in that. Grandparents are buying for kids and hit or miss. And if it's a quality item or a quality toy and made that way, then it probably has the appeal to be picked up by anybody, which is a pretty unique challenge in your space. Because if we're making cars, there's a target market, right? It's not something that is that level of detailed customization for that wide of an age group. One other question on that, because that does imply a level of customization. You alluded to your team that does all the design work. Where have you guys over the past year looked at, this is something that is very specific to the toy manufacturing faces some of the strictest safety and compliance standards, right, in any consumer goods, just because of the nature. And I think often to the age limit on the box kind of thing. And I jokingly refer to the Lego up to age 99. There's a great joke about cutting the Legos off at age 100. But how does that shape operations? Because that's something that stays true no matter what the environment, whether you're making it offshore, nearshore in the USA. That's probably something that's pretty complex.
It is. And I think that's where it really helps to have experienced people within QC internally. But then on the flip side, finding a lab that, whether it's, I won't mention names because we use a couple different ones, but finding a testing lab that you trust, but also that collaborates with you. And they say, this doesn't work, but if you did this, it would work. So having them in on not the creative process, but the finishing process to make sure that we are compliant. And toys with the CPSIA, everything has to be up to standard in terms of materials, craftsmanship, pull tests, especially for plush. So it's a complex process. And that's why I would suggest anyone looking into anything manufacturing is to find great partners wherever they are, whether they're in the US or Asia or wherever. Make sure that they're great partners and understand everything that's needed when they manufacture your product.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. I've dealt with some testing and past contract manufacturers or with just manufacturing in general. It can be hard because sometimes they are regulatory or preparing you for regulatory, but at times it sits on the dock. If you get something UL tested or something like that, you got to get the feedback into your design process. And that's something a lot of manufacturers face challenges with. You did allude to something there that was pretty interesting as part of the process. Toy manufacturing specifically is a rare mix of artistry and process. How do you protect the creativity while running efficient operations? Because some folks don't see like a lot of creativity or room for creativity in manufacturing, and this is something that your industry does uniquely.
Yeah, my favorite thing is creating product. So usually we have 2 brainstorm sessions a week or creative calls a week to always add into our line, create a new line, or at least start to ideate something we could come up with. But it is a race, right? Where people are like, oh, you guys must be so busy now. And they don't understand I'm busy now for Christmas 2026 because the major retailers and the major partners, they're making decisions almost before this Christmas is over. Most of their plans are laid. So unless there's an item that bombs this Christmas and they'll drop it off, they're so far out. So yes, the creativity, you have to be fast, and everybody has their own look, right? And the look is in the eye of the beholder. Make sure you have a great creative team. If anyone's listening out there who wants to start a company, make sure you have a great creative team.
It makes a lot of sense. I think it's something that doesn't get enough credit because creativity and manufacturing go hand in hand, right? Whether it's toys or anything else. A lot of people don't see that. They see it as like this process-driven thing that's step 1 through 10. And the creativity behind it is actually what drives the manufacturing and the making of it, which is what makes it really exciting. Turning now to like the look ahead and what on the horizon. If you look out 5 to 10 years from now, what do you think toy and plush manufacturing will look like? Any big changes, or just you see this kind of trend building, or what does it look like over the next decade?
I definitely see the trend continuing to be a super category. That's what we call it in toys, is plush is a super category. It's a $10 billion category around the world, I think, but it's more than that because there's promotions that don't get counted in there and things like that. I think there's a turn to more customization for sure, which we're doing more of, where you can make one of a kind. So if, God forbid, your pet dies or you want a replica of your pet, I think there's going to be a lot more companies doing that. We're currently doing that. So customization, I think people are going to expect better quality just across the board, just with manufacturing and the way we can do things now. And I've seen it just in my time over the last 30 years in plush, even how we sew the product or how we cut the product and make the pattern. It's different. It's all laser cut now. It's all very precise. So I think, and I hope the bar continues to be raised and that the consumer will have great products for their kids or for themselves, right? So I do see the trend continuing, and I see the quality bar being raised, and I see more customization coming.
It's the ever increasing trend of customization and fast delivery time, like we call it the Amazon effect. We see it in the industrial base all the time with folks pushing for that. So that makes a lot of sense. What makes you optimistic about the future of U.S. consumer goods manufacturing? There's a lot to look forward to. I think customization, big part of that. But it seems like there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for kind of adapting to the market. What makes you the most optimistic about it?
I mean, for the U.S., really, I think you touched on it earlier, is the whole automation of things. Because I follow a lot of manufacturing companies from candy to garments. I visited that G7 factory, and the machines they have that do the majority of the work. You still need people to work the machines and bug out the machines and things like that. But I think that's the optimism for the US, is to embrace the automation, embrace AI. Truly, I know AI's kind of a curse word these days, but I saw a futurist and he said, if we can just embrace AI, it'll raise the standard for everybody. And when he said standard, he meant standard of living. So it's, how do we do that? And how do we do it smartly and as a society, especially in the US? Because it's going crazy. Look at NVIDIA, look at all these companies who are making it. How do we make it better for us? Obviously, the obvious ones, farming and things like that. But that's my optimism, is I hope we can embrace the technology and the AI and use it for good and use it to help the people on the margins, truly, who are barely making it by. I hope it raises the bar. It's not raise the bar, raise the standard for them.
No, that's extremely optimistic. I think we get this recurring theme and this drumbeat all the time about the doom of AI. And I guess it could have the potential, right? But everywhere we're seeing it, it's enhancing people's quality of life in regards to their daily life. They can make more informed decisions or help with menial on the fringe tasks that make them more productive as an employee, as a person, as a consumer, whatever role they're playing. Very good optimistic framing there. What's next for your company, and where can our listeners go to find out more about Beverly Hills Teddy Bear Company?
We're going to continue to push the envelope to try and be better in everything we do, push the quality standards and the design, and we just try to do it different. We'll expand our manufacturing. We'll continue to see if there's a way that we can find a factory on this side of the ocean that makes sense. And yeah, you can find us. Our main website is plush.com. We have a couple other sub-brands called customplush.com and custom stuffed animals. But plush.com will get you anywhere you need to be for our company. And really grateful for the time today, Matt.
Yes, I am as well. Great insights too. This is something that we don't get the chance to talk about. It's something that's in everybody's everyday life, and it's very nostalgic, by the way. You're talking through some of this makes me think back to childhood toys, and now you think about it as an adult. Where were they made? How were they made? And why are they still around? We kick them around from grandparents' house now. We've got things that are still have been around for 30, 40 years, to your point, and nobody can seem to donate it or get rid of it.
That's the unique thing about stuffed animals. People say, why should I get a stuffed animal if I'm doing a promotion? And I said, because no one will ever throw it out. Someone will own it. Either they'll own it or they'll donate it, but it never gets thrown out unless obviously it gets soiled or something like that. But that's the beauty of stuffed animals. It takes on a living, breathing friend.
Well said. Thank you again for your insights, and we really enjoyed having you on today.
Thank you. Have a great one.
To stay ahead of the curve and to help plan your strategy, please check out our website at variableops.com and under the resources section titled Trump 2.0, where you can see the framework around upcoming policies from the administration and how they will impact you. If you're on socials, give us a follow on LinkedIn, X, Truth, or Instagram. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please feel free to follow the show on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and leave us a rating, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you again for joining us and learning more about how you can make your way.